Folks, thanks for joining us. We'll be going through a fascinating journey of a man named Joseph who spent 7 years in a Chinese political prison. Once he was able to get out of the country, he was able to rebuild a free life here in Canada. This story serves as a reason the next clip should worry us all here in Canada.
China.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say we need.
Joseph, tell us a little about yourself, the early years, where you were born, and how it all started.
I was born in China in the middle of the East Coast, near Shanghai. After I was born, China was very poor and everybody lived a very terrible life. Although the government claimed Chinese people live the best and all the Western countries are suffering. And when we were at school, the school taught us the Western people are suffering. We must be ready to liberate all of them. So I was supposed to come to liberate you guys.
Joseph, what led you to end up doing 7 years in a political prison? What was the early years that started out and all this transpired?
At the beginning, the Chinese government was considered me as a smart student. They thought I could be useful for them, so they even gave me a lot of academic award and to make me of their tools. But I really believed what they have taught about, and I really believed in things like communism. But when I really think of the communism theory, it's about equality, freedom, justice. When I look around, China has nothing about that. It's all corruption, and everywhere I go I see the inequality. They treat one class different or above the others. So when I see that, I start to realize China was not a communist country at all. As soon as I start to think independently, the authorities start to criticize me and also try to correct me. They, like a principal, talked to me many times, told me that I was wrong, and I was thinking I was just only see one tree. I couldn't see the forest.
Describe the court process and how you were treated throughout that process. Anything of interest there?
The year I was arrested was 1989. That year the Tiananmen Square student movement occurred, and thousands of the students and civilians in Beijing was murdered. And in September of that year, I was arrested. Yeah, I have gone through the court process, but China's court process is so different. We have no lawyers to defend us. Actually, some of my friends in the prison, they got a lawyer, but they told me the lawyer is a second prosecutor. Actually, they could not defend anybody at all. So I didn't have a lawyer to defend me, and they tried to shame me. Whatever they always try to make us feel that we are very low and they are very high. And during the court process time, the provincial newspaper published an article, and they showed me the article. The article described me as homeless, uneducated, and jobless. Is just a nobody roaming around the country. Is people should just look down on me. They described like that about me just to shame me and also to make other people who know me to feel, oh, this is garbage.
How long did your trial last?
It's about 1 hour, 2 hours.
And then 7 years right after that?
Yeah, actually 8 years.
Wow.
8 years original sentence. And they asked me, oh, do you want to appeal? I know China has no real court process. I said, no, this is not a real court system. So I would not go through that.
So Joseph, what was day-to-day life like in prison? What's the routine, the food, just a general, day-to-day?
The day-to-day life in prison is different time to time. At the beginning, before 1991, the prison life was really tough. The government thought that nobody cared about us, and they can do whatever they want to do against us. And we were tortured, we were limited food resource, and we really live a very tough life. And sometimes even force us to sit in front of a wall, sit in a small stool, and for like 12, 15 hours, not allowed to move. When you move, they can slash, or they can just kick, they can beat you right away. That's at the beginning of 1991. After end of 1991, life got a little bit better. I didn't know why that year, but later on, after I escaped from China through the lawyer who helped me to apply for refugee status in United Nations, he found out that the State Department of US had brought my name to China to their concern list and asked about my whereabouts and asked the Chinese government to release me. So I know that year that has happened. Also, I know that year US Congress team went to China to visit some prison, include the prison I was staying. I think that Congress representatives, they want to see some of the political prisoners, including me and some others. That, I think now I realize through that time we get a little bit better treatment. But it's still very tough. We have to do very hard labor work. Otherwise we still cannot eat enough food, and time to time we still can get torture, beating, like that.
Tell me how inmate-to-inmate interactions were in jail. Was there any kind of camaraderie, or were you guys pitted against each other? How did it work?
At the beginning, in that prison, we have 14 political prisoners locked up together. The Chinese government not allow us to spread our ideas. They were afraid, other inmates could be influenced by us. So we political prisoners, at the beginning, we were locked up together in one cell. But eventually they found out when we were all together, actually, we was quite friendly, and we influenced each other and study further about, the democracy or freedom, and we get more influenced with the Western ideas. So after, I think, 2 years, we were separated and then put with other criminals together. And at that time, a lot of the criminals start to harass us, sometimes to beat us, and or take our food, or try to intimidate us. That happened a lot.
So how would you describe the stress level? How did you feel on a day-to-day basis while inside that prison?
At the beginning in prison, the Chinese government tried to brainwash us all the time. They forced us to watch their programs, how great China was, how evil the Western are. And every day they try to force us to denounce ourselves, force us to praise the communist. And anytime if we refuse, they will take away the food, and they will deprive our sleeping time. They will just do a lot of things just to force us to show that we believe what they have been telling us.
So would you say you're continually under stress and pressure the whole time you were in there?
Yeah, the whole time. And to watch all those programs, the TV programs, and to read their newspapers, it's very stressful, because they not only they force us to read, to watch, every piece by piece, they force us to write essay about how we think after we watch, how we think after we read.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So on the lighter side, were there any, glimmers of hope, or parts where, there was some levity, I guess, or some sort of fun while you were in jail at all?
Everybody knows, I think, in the world that 1990 or 1991, Soviet Union dissolved. Mm-hmm. And we were thinking, oh, China should be the same soon.
Right.
Because all communism, they should collapse very soon. So we were so happy. Although we live very miserable life, but we have hope at that time. Plus, I think God has really set up my life with His program, probably. Even before I was prisoned, even I was not able to finish my high school in China, but I was able to read, write, and speak English. So when I was in the prison, and at that time, even the Chinese police officers know that the Western world is much better than China. So they want their kids to learn English. So a lot of those, the guards, the police guards, they send their kids to me to learn English. And the kids, like me a lot. They not only brought me some extra good food from their home, and when I was, thirsty about the information outside, some kids even brought me a shortwave radio. Do you understand shortwave radio?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, shortwave radio in China at that time, it was so useful for political prisoners, because we can hear Voice of America and some radio stations from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, and from all over the world. We can hear their voice, and we know that the Western government or Western people are paying attention to us, and we really feel relieved and feel that, have a good feeling, even live a very stressful, terrible life.
So take us through the process of how you got out of jail, and what were the restrictions like, just a general process, and how did it all work out for you?
You know, now when we talk about the prison life, we don't feel much of the pain. But at the beginning of that years, and it's really tough. And the 5th year in prison, I feel I could not survive because I feel so stressed and feel so desperate, feel no hope. And by that time, the communists promised if I plead guilty, they can shorten the prison life. So I was sentenced to 8 years. By the 5th year, I surrendered. Then they reduced 1 year, so they fulfilled their promise. They gave you 1 year reduction. So after the 7th year, I was released. But even released from prison, life continued to be tough because they don't really trust me. They don't really believe in my heart, I've already surrendered to them.
Right.
So they want to make sure I would continue to live miserable life, even not in prison.
Do they have like a parole system at all when you get out?
To talk about parole life, it's not about the same in China and the Canada. It's not the same kind of things.
Right.
Even we were released from prison, they have a period called deprived of political rights. But actually to a political prisoner like me, is deprived of every kind of rights, like obtain a job or hold the job, to be able to make a living, to survive. All those rights is not with us.
So it's almost like you're in prison still, except for you're on the outside.
Yes.
Gotcha. So how did you come to leave the country? How did you get out and make your way to Canada? And how eventually did you get your family out and bring them over as well?
After I was released from prison, I can't have a job. I can't make a living. And even though I like to fight for the people in China, but I just couldn't continue. The life is tougher and tougher. And at that time, also I met my wife. And she was young, she had a good job, but she insists to date me. I know that if I stay there, I would cause a lot of trouble for her. The government would take her job away and also punish her because she dared to date a man like me. So I had no choice but to make decision to flee China. 25 years ago, at that time, China didn't have technology like today's. The border was relatively loose, and I was able to cross the border with some help from some smugglers. And when I was in prison, I met a friend who was also a political prisoner, but he was from Burma. He told me if I arrived in Burma in the border, one of his friends could help me and to get through Burma to Thailand. After I crossed that border, I tried to find that friend. I couldn't find. Maybe after so many years, maybe moved away, or maybe I don't know what happened. I couldn't find that friend. So it's very tough for me because nobody could help me. It was a miracle, like when nobody could help me.
So you just kept going through?
I kept going.
Right.
I crossed a forest area, a direct straight distance about 40, 50 kilometers of distance. That's all jungle area. Mm-hmm. Even they have a gravel trail, but the trail was stationed by Burmese military units. I could not walk through that trail. I have to all walk through the jungle. It was terrible. It was a May in 1997. Hot. The jungle has a lot of poisonous snakes, wild animals. It was dangerous even for a group of people. Many people in group walk 3-5 days. I still inside cannot walk out. But for me, it's about 24 hours I was able to walk out. And at that time, something was even interesting happened. And I wasn't prepared because I thought the friend could help me, but end up nobody could. So I didn't prepare anything. I was thirsty and walking in the jungle. At the top of the hill, somebody left a jug of water over there. That was just so helpful. I didn't care. That's a clean water or whatever. I was so thirsty, I just drink it.
That's right.
Yeah, even in the jungle was so scary. I fall down cliffs many times. I climb up and continue. It was scary. To scare away some animals, I even start to sing loud. Maybe could scare animals away. The song I was singing, I still can remember today, was 500 miles, because I was leaving my girlfriend behind. I thought I could never see her again. 100, 200, 300, 500 miles.
So tell us about how you actually got out to Canada now that we've already crossed the border and you've sort of gotten to Thailand. What were the next steps for you?
Yeah, as I have mentioned, it's like a series of miracles happened. After I got out of that jungle, I arrived in a city called Kingdong. It's a Burmese city. When I was trying to find somebody help me to cross that city to the border to Thailand, one evil Chinese man lured me to his house and want to take all of my money. But without promise that he could help me to get to Thailand. He wanted all my money, but wasn't able to do anything. When I refused to give him all the money and I refused to do whatever he asked me, he handed me over to a Burmese officer. At that time, when a person like me illegally entered Burma, handed over to a Burmese military officer, the one result would be just like lock me up in a Burmese prison and ask my family to send money again and again and again until they feel that my family finance has been drained up. That's 99% of the time that should happen. after I was handed over to that military officer, I know my fate would be very bad. So I know I would have no way to escape anymore. So when the Burmese officer asked me why you want to go to Thailand, I told him I was jailed in China for 7 years. I was a political prisoner. God, this man was an angel. This Burmese military officer was a pro-democracy guy.
That's a lucky find.
Yeah, and immediately he told me, don't worry, we will not lock you up. I will arrange somebody to drive you to Thailand. Then I actually took all my money to him, $300 plus some Chinese money, and he only took the $300 to give to a driver. He himself didn't take any money. Actually, even $300 not enough for a driver to drive anybody from that city to the border, because that's 270 kilometers of distance. At least there were 4 military checkpoints in the whole road. And for me myself, if I try to walk through that area, it's kind of a mission impossible. But this officer arranged this driver to deal with all the checkpoints and also bought me food during the time. It's about 10 hours drive from this city to the border. When we arrive in the border city, it's called Touch Lake. It's next to a Thai city. It's called Misai. When we arrived there, the driver even paid for a hotel, one-night hotel, for me to stay.
Nice.
So it was so nice. I feel, it's so good. I get an angel to help me. But I didn't realize still tough road ahead. At the prison, that friend has told me that he also have another friend in the border between Burma and Thailand. The name and the phone number, the address, I all kept with me, I know. So I should find that person to help me. When I found that man, he was there, everything was right, except situation changed. His ideas already changed. He would not help me. He started to think the communism is good. So nobody could help me. That was shock for me and disappointment, and I feel hopeless again. And for 2 days I couldn't find anybody to help me to cross the border, because that border was very strictly guarded by both countries. So after 2 days I spent all the money I have left. I found no way other than just walk through the border. I decided to just walk through the bridge. The bridge was heavily guarded by 2 countries. But I walked through the bridge, seeing others all checked. Nobody checked me.
Jeez. The luck, right?
Yeah, that's a luck.
Yeah.
That's just a miracle again.
So after you got through the border, how did you end up getting to Canada? What was the next step?
Next few steps, actually.
Mm-hmm.
After I got to Thailand, because I have spent all my money, I could not go further. So I went to a U.S. embassy in Chiang Mai. It's the Western embassy. It's not embassy, consulate. It's only U.S. consulate I know at that time in Chiang Mai. So I went, but I wasn't famous enough, I guess. The U.S. consulate said they could not help me unless I got to Thailand, to Bangkok. So only UN could help me. But Chiang Mai to Bangkok still, I think, 700 kilometers away. And many police checkpoints too. Any illegal immigrant could not cross that area. So, but since I know that in Thailand, anybody speak English would be much respected, as I heard from that prisoner friend in China. So I spoke English all the way. The people did respect me. All the policemen was very respectful when I talked to them. So I thought they might help me. So I talked to a police officer in a police station and asked them whether they can help me to Bangkok, because otherwise I have to walk through the checkpoints. It's also have to go through again and again. So I thought the police might just help me at the beginning. But when they asked me for my ID, I have no ID to show. Then they know that I was a illegal immigrant. Then they locked me up in that immigration detention center.
How long did you spend there?
Almost 2 months.
Ooh.
Almost 2 months. But after, like 2 weeks after I was in the prison, this immigration detention center, the Chinese consulate sent their officers come to visit me. It happened that day while the Chinese diplomat was visiting me. A Canadian missionary, Pastor Barry, was visiting other Western detainees there. Other Western detainees usually is overstayed or so wasn't following the immigration rules. That's an immigration detention center. Nobody really criminal, but overstay or illegal entry. So that day that Pastor Barry was visiting other Western detainees. Usually, a lot of the Chinese detainees there would ask Pastor Barry to bring a letter for them to Chinese consulate. So Pastor Barry happened no Chinese diplomats in that area, in Chiang Mai. When he saw that I was interviewed by 3 Chinese diplomats, she was amused because he had brought so many letters, asked them to help. The Chinese diplomats never come to help any Chinese detainees. And then he asked the guard why the Chinese diplomats come to see this man. So the Thai guard told him I was a Tiananmen Square student. Because at that time they mistaken me as Tiananmen Square student. I wasn't. I was just an organizer to help the Tiananmen Square movement in the provincial capital. I was, not even able to enter university, so I wasn't a student in Beijing. But Thai people would think any of the political prisoner in China was just a German school student. So then Pastor Barry realized what has happened. I must be somehow quite important for the Chinese diplomat to come to interview me. So the next day, Pastor Barry came to visit me and asked me what happened. I told him the Chinese diplomat has promised me to send me back to China without further persecution. And they said they could issue me a passport next time come to Thailand legally, so nobody would arrest me again. Pastor Barry said, oh, when they make such promise, it means probably you will be jailed again if you go back to China. As he told me that he would help me, and Jesus is God, and Jesus is Almighty, and don't lose hope, and pray to God, and you might be out, get freedom. So only a few days later, he came with another lady, come to visit me again, brought me 2 loaves of bread. And he told me, don't open the bread openly. I need to open the bread when nobody around. I know something might be in the bread. So when I got back to the prison cell, and when I see nobody around me, I open it. They have $200 worth of Thai money there. At that time, that detention centers, nobody is really criminal. So if anybody run away, nobody would be held responsible. So usually, $100 worth of money given to the guard would allow the detainees to go out to sweep the street, to clean up the street. So that means you can just go without nobody getting punished or responsible. Okay, when I have that money now, I offered to the guard this $100 worth of Thai money, and he told me, no way for you. You gave me 20 times more than this, I would dare not to release you. Because the government between Thailand and China has made firm arrangement. You will be sent back to China, and the ticket already bought for you. Till, he told me the date, I forgot what's the date now. But he told me, nobody dare to release you, to let you go. It was such a shock, because everybody else could just offer this $100 worth, and then he would just let them go. So a few days later, Pastor Barry came to see me again, and I was still there. He asked me, you don't know what to do? I told him, I know what to do, but the guard have told me even I gave 20 times more than this, nobody dare to release me. The two government has made firm arrangement. And he told me don't lose hope, pray, and God may show me a miracle. He held my hand and prayed for me. I didn't believe, but when he was praying, my tear was running down. I could not control. I didn't believe, but I just have that feeling. I don't know why. So 3 days before my deportation date, the guard who has been guarding me at daytime got sick. A new guard was assigned to guard me that day. When they switched that job, the previous guard didn't tell this new guard how important I was.
That's lucky.
And I offered $100 again this time, and he allowed me to sweep the street. Yeah, after I ran away from that detention center, Pastor Barry helped me to get through to Bangkok, and eventually I got recognized by UN as a political, asylum seeker, and then we applied to come to Canada. The Canadian government was able to accept me and brought me to Canada with my wife together.
So Joseph, you have friends and family back in China. Can you tell me specifically how things have changed since you left, for their circumstances, and also what level of control the government's now pushing down on the people, as far as you know from your day-to-day conversations with your family?
After I come to Canada, on the news and everywhere, like a TV program or the newspaper, everywhere was publishing the articles about China, how the economy was good and people's lives improved. But actually, I tell you, that was false. In my hometown, the people actually suffer more. They need to work longer times, and life is tougher for everyone. Like before 2004, in my hometown, average annual income was like less than $1,000 a year average. But they tell the world the average income was like more than 5,000 or something like that. The people live a very good life. But actually, no. In my hometown, even they make only less than $1,000 a year, but they pay, like a primary school student need to pay tuition like $500. And my family, they make so little, and each of them have to pay like a head tax. They don't call that head tax, but actually is according to the population, how many people in the family, they pay that much tax. More than half are taken by the government. So if any family has a kids need to go to school, they are not able to pay for that unless they have to go outside 1,000 miles away to find an extra job to back-breaking hard labor job, do day and no holiday, no rest.
Tell us a bit more about the controls that are being put in place since you left. How has it gotten ratcheted up since even the last few years?
I think it's because of the technology advance. The Chinese government has been able to control the people with more and more with higher and higher technologies. They use the cell phone now. They use the civilian cameras. Now it's almost, you cannot escape anything. I think even 10 years ago, a Western reporter in China was trying to test how efficient the government could find anybody. He even did makeup and did a lot of trick, try to get away from the surveillance. But the maximum is 7 minutes, they can find him again.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
So Joseph, in a previous conversation, you told me about a tracking app that China is putting in place on all its population. Could you elaborate on that a little bit and tell me what you've heard from your people over there?
Yeah, most of the people would think that tracking app was for like a pandemic control. But actually, no, it's for just totally for control the people. Like in one of the province, in Henan province, there were about 50,000 people. Their money in the bank was ripped off. 50,000 of them. Because all these 50,000 people planned to protest, then suddenly these 50,000 people were all given like a yellow and a red alert for pandemic control. But it's not for pandemic, it's just a way to not allow them to leave their home. So when they leave, oh, you are dangerous, you can spread the virus. But no, these 50,000 people at that time was nothing to do with the pandemic, with the COVID virus.
So it's more like they're dangerous because they're spreading freedom is probably the more likely.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So you think this is a permanent control like the vaccine passport that was brought into Canada?
Yeah, that could be.
But
very possible.
Right. That's scary. So how would you say your life is in Canada now in comparison to, say, how it was in China?
I'm very grateful for Canada. Not only for allowing me to come to Canada, the immigrant here, but also give me the chance to get education. I was able to graduate from Langara College in Vancouver, BC. And after then, I was able to work as the accounting person, like a controller and a hotel manager, and eventually come to Cremona and run a restaurant and made good friends here and live a good life. Not only that, since 2013, I was elected as a municipal councillor, and since then I have been municipal councillor and now even deputy mayor. So although the Chinese government try to tell the Chinese people that we Chinese live overseas are second class and no rights, but my experience really showed the difference. I really appreciate.
Well, that's awesome, Joseph. It's good to see a guy being able to make a full recovery from that system. So let's just touch on propaganda. So obviously both sides, East and West, use propaganda. Can you give us kind of your take on the way that the Chinese government pushes its propaganda to its own people and across the globe? Just give us a few minutes on what you think and the general, how it's done.
Here there's two things I'm very concerned. First, the Chinese government taking advantage of the freedom of speech, freedom of press in Western countries. They set up their own agenda using the Western freedom of press and to advance their own propaganda. And they can bribe reporters or even using business benefit to force Western media to write about how good they are, to do the propaganda. Maybe not knowingly, and some I think is knowingly, not really not knowingly. Knowingly or not knowingly to spread the Chinese propaganda, how the China was doing so well. That's my concern, one. The second concern was that the Western countries, the political correctness is in place now. They censor what people can say and what cannot say. And I think most of the Western media now, they dare not to publish things that are not pro-China. And when there's something should concern the Western people, they would think of their business gain. All those media outlets would think the business gain, like advertisement, like investment, all those things. They are worried about those things more than worried about Western information, like the people should know.
So that's what we call bought and paid for.
Yeah, bought and paid for, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, Joseph, I've asked a whole bunch of questions. Is there anything else you want to add to this, just in general terms?
Go back to the question about Justin Trueadou, what he said about he like Chinese dictatorship, that's more efficient government. But look back to China for last 100 years. Their dictatorship is the worst in the world. They can dictate whatever. People has no freedom. The strongest dictatorship in the world. But look at the last 200, 300 years. The Western countries advance in technology, in economy, in human rights, and in social welfare. Western countries life has been improved better and better. But look at China. The dictatorship has caused what? Wars, caused famines, caused people starved to death, millions and millions. So dictatorship is not a solution for human beings. That's one thing I should warn all the Western countries. Don't think that the government control, government dictatorship is better government. Eventually we will feel the pain. Eventually, when we live the same thing like the Chinese people has lived through, it might be too late, and we might have no chance to change that course. And another thing I want to talk about is the so-called racism. When I look at the racism, I look in a different picture. To the past few centuries, when I look through which race is the best race, treat other races with respect, with human ways. When I look at that, I think the worst racist is not the white people. Why we try to criticize the best and leave the worst alone? Other races treat white people, treat other races with no respect, with hatred, and with no access to any kind of social service when they deal with other races. Why we don't criticize that, to change that? Instead, we criticize the one who treat other races much better. So I think racism here is not about racism. It's about political correctness now, and it's also considered as a tool to shut others up. So I think we need to to realize that and be cautious.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, Joseph, thanks for joining us and sharing your story, and thanks for joining us, folks.
Thank you for having me here. I just wish everybody good luck in the future for the Canadian politics. We don't go too far to the dictatorship.